Hello, this is Cecil Sunk here, and I have two replays from NSH Tassadar, New Star Hyoso, and Slayer's Ryung, the Terran player. We're going to be watching Tassadar in these two replays, and this is going to be a video on learning to play like Tassadar, where I go over the replays and get as much knowledge out of them as I can, and share it with you so that we can learn from all of Tassadar's decisions, perhaps steal his build, learn things about his build, and hopefully you can also learn how to do this, or at least get a better idea of how to study replays on your own time as well, not just from Hotkeyit videos. So, the opening is a 1-gate fast expand, and what's interesting about it is his chrono boost usage, in my opinion. He does 3 chrono boosts. First 25 energy, 3 batches of 25 energy go onto his Nexus, and then he starts saving for his Stalker right when the gateway finishes, and the Cybernetics core. The scouting info that he gained is that there's no gas, 1 Rax. So this is indicative of a 1 Rax fast expand, especially because he's keeping the probe inside the base and able to see what goes on. And he actually almost gets an SCV here. I'm gonna watch this real quick. Oops. Get the SCV, get the SCV. Not quite. Here comes those 2 chrono boosts. Bam, bam. Get the Stalker right after the Stalker. And of course he did get the second assimilator. Right after the first Stalker comes the first Nexus. First Stalker looks all around here in this path that I'm following and stops. Right up here. Looking for that scouting SCV. Places the Nexus down. And now this is another thing I thought was interesting. He orders a next Stalker and immediately chronos it. So he has one paused here and he's chrono boosting this one out. Getting it out very quickly. And what this goes to show me is that he's looking for the scouting SCV, or anything else for that matter, on the 2 entrances to his base. Here, and of course if he holds this tower he can see this whole area. That way he can see everything that can go in and out of his side of the map, his first three starting bases. And he does this with 2 Stalkers. I'd say this is map specific to Daybreak, but something important to note and learn from nonetheless. Now this is a very interesting allocation of resources, in my opinion of course. He gets a sentry before getting the robotics facility. But that's not what's interesting, is that he gets it before the robo. It's when he gets it. He gets it when he spends 400 minerals here, 300 minerals here, 200 minerals here. And he has a fair amount of Vespene left over. Sentry only costs 50 minerals, so it's a smart allocation of resources. A lot of expensive mineral things and expensive Vespene thing can be built at the same time, basically for free. And of course he gets the robo, so that he can continue with his 3-gate robo build order. Very standard toss opening after a 1-gate fast expand. So now he's able to, well, he didn't pick it off with the Stalker, didn't quite see it fast enough. But he's able to try and deny all scouting information. Ryung has not really seen anything at this point. If this had been shot by the Stalker a couple times on its way by, these 2 sentries would have been able to kill it, and there would be no scouting whatsoever, and Ryung would have to take extra precautions to play extra safe. So now Ryung is not going to be able to know if there's a command center here. He does not know what tech is going on. So scouting info is extremely limited to him. Next thing is a Forge, a Twilight Council, and momentarily a support bay coming up. And he has 3 sentries. Of course, observers as well. Now what's interesting to know is why he gets all these different buildings. Usually you'd see 2 assimilators go down right at about 710, followed up with 2 forges. And then instead he goes for a Forge Twilight Council and a Robotic Support Bay. The reason that's interesting is because by getting 1 less Forge, you start spending less resources on upgrades. and thus you can afford a robotics facility and a very fast Colossus. Whereas if you had that extra forge here, and you're spending gas on all 3 of those upgrades, you wouldn't be able to support such, and you'd have to get Immortals out of this Robo Bay instead of Colossus. So in getting the faster support bay, your Colossus come out quicker, and Colossus benefit much more from attack upgrade than they do armor. So armor isn't really needed in this situation. Especially if you have Blink, you're going to be blinking your Stalkers back during a battle, hopefully before they take hull damage in the first place. So all of this makes a lot of sense, all fitting together. And these gateways here are just for additional units. After you get your tech structures down off of a build like this, you place down extra gateways. Optionally, you can take a fast third, and then place down extra gateways. Depends on the situation. We can see with the scouting info of this flying observer, he saw that there's no third, so he's not taking a third himself. And the rest of the game results in Tassadar sitting in his natural, using these sentries to gather energy. He'll be able to take out any army that comes into this enclosed area very easily with sentries. His Blink Stalkers in his main, or soon to be Blink Stalkers in his main. For any drops that are coming across the map, you can see the bio moving out. There's a drop on the way. He's not going to be able to be dropped because of Blink. And he proceeds into the later portion of the game with an extremely strong 3 Colossus, +2 attack, or +1/+1 attack with Lance and Blink Stalkers. Before he proceeds across the map, what he does is he takes care of this factory so that Ryung can't see if he's placing a third down or not. After that, he moves out, and note he has no Blink Stalkers in his main, so if he were to get dropped, it would be very bad for him. He moves his army south. That way his Blink Stalkers can perhaps apprehend any medevacs that are over here. That way the chances of him being dropped in his main are slim. He also does have a Zealot here, just for scouting purposes. And now, an extremely powerful push with Blink Stalkers and Colossus with Lance are coming at the opponent. The reason this is very interesting is because right at about this time, Ryung, with his medevac timing, isn't really going to be allowing Tassadar to take a third. Here you can see Ryung taking a third while doing this medevac pressure. I think this is very excellent of Ryung. However, look at the army of Tassadar. With this setup of Colossus, he can't afford to split his army across 3 bases. There's just no way he can take a third right now. His infrastructure isn't set up for it. However, what his infrastructure is set up for is an extremely powerful 2-base push, which will be coming into my screen location momentarily. So now what Tassadar's goal is simply to see if there's a third. He sees that there's a third. It's a planetary fortress. Does not want to engage a planetary fortress. That'll cost him the game. Instead, what he does is attacks an SCV. So now, Ryung is going to have a harder time knowing exactly where the opponent's army is, kind of bouncing back and forth. Ooh, almost lost his War Prisoner. And now we'll be able to see just how strong this push is with Tassadar. Notice how he has the sentries over towards all of this bio. This blink over that he did was absolutely brilliant. What it did was expose some of these zealots to the biofire so that they can actually act as the shields properly. You don't want all of your stalkers tanking a bunch of bio hits. That gets the guardian shield over some of the zealots, and it gets the sentries in range to throw down some key force fields during the battle. And the stalkers are more under the Vikings now, and the Vikings are forced to reposition down here. And it's taking them time to reposition down here instead of firing at the Colossus. And you can see Tassadar using Blink to blink some of his stalkers back whenever he has the APM. They took out all of the Vikings that were left. And suddenly this extremely strong 3-base Colossus push is basically just smashing Ryung. And the reason it's smashing Ryung is because he wasn't ever able to get a very good engagement position. And he just didn't have enough stuff to face this army. I would say that in order to fend off a Colossus push like this, you need a whole lot of Vikings and a whole lot of bio. And if you take a third too late, then the third won't be able to pay off for itself properly, and you'll end up not having enough units to take care of a push like this. However, if you take the third earlier, then you will have enough units to take care of a push like this. Here's the second replay of Tassadar and Ryung. Up here we have Tassadar doing the same exact opening as last game, but things of note are that he has, well, he actually has about the same scouting info. Oops, wrong one. You can see here, this is pretty indicative of a one racks fast expand. And now it definitely is a 1 racks fast expand. And what that means is that all he needs to do is create one stalker, and then he can get down his nexus. But what's interesting is last game he chronoed out the second stalker. This game instead he doesn't even order a stalker. He gets a sentry instead. And the reason for this is because there's simply one less lane of travel required to defend. Whereas on this map, there's like this single entrance to your base. One tower can cover a whole wide area in front of your natural. On Daybreak, there's an entire other lane of travel leading to your third that Tassadar wanted to cover. So he must feel comfortable denying this SCV scout with this position, which he is. He ends up using a force field just to make sure the robotics facility and gateway count is not seen by Leo. So now we have the 3 gates and a robotics facility. Very standard. Right at about 7 minutes to 7:10. Double assimilator. And then up here, right after the double assimilator, you see double forge go down. After the double forge, we should see Twilight's Council momentarily. And while that's happening, we're getting up our sentry count. You want 3 or 4 sentries. I'm seeing 3 a lot more, as protesters are probably just figuring out how to utilize their sentries a bit better, realizing that 4 is a little bit overdoing it. A lot of times you can get away with just 3 in the mid game. Here's that Twilight Council. And of course, double upgrades being chrono boosted are coming out. And an Immortal is in the mix, which differs from the last game, where he got a Colossus, 1 Forge, and a Twilight Council. And this one, double upgrades means much more late game focused, going to be taking a third base. Since you don't have Colossus, you're able to split your army up into segments, where you don't need to keep your Colossus all in a bunch for them to be extremely effective. So this sort of setup means you're ready to take a third in the event that you need to. After the Twilight Council, most of the time you're going to need more gateways to support your income as you saturate your second base. Stalkers in the main, always require them to stop drops. Blink is almost finished, and the support bay is going down before the third base has been taken. Observer for Tassadar has seen, looks like these 2 structures going down. What are they? Oh, 2 more gates, or gateway, or Raxes, 2 more Raxes. So this looks extremely standard. He sees the medevacs, so he knows that there's no fast third going down. It's just a medevac, normal medevac. In this situation, all you need to do is keep your Immortals, your Sentries, and your Zealots up your ramp at your natural. Keep your Stalkers, Blink Stalkers in the main, looking for drops. Chrono boost out your double upgrades and work on getting the Colossus out. Gets a free medevac, some free units here. Tassadar's trading very well right now. He's up by about 10 food because of that. Gets another free medevac, and once this Colossus comes out, he can push this army away and take his third base. And he snipes a medevac full of units. So now because of this intelligent engagement where he was just sitting on his ramp waiting for the Terran to engage him, he kept getting good positions, getting free units. Now he's up in supply by a good amount, able to freely take his third base. And take a look at this gigantic line of stalkers in the main. As you take your third and you move your army out into the open, it's a great time for the Terran to drop you. So you can see Tassadar being fully prepared for that. And now Tassadar is just getting his tech exactly where it needs to be. Immediately saturating his third, laying down a whole lot of gateways, because as he's not going to be producing more probes, since he has a full 3-base saturation, he's going to have a higher need to spend his money somewhere else. That's why you need more gateways. Also, after a major engagement, you need a ton of gateways to replenish your army. This timing is very excellent. 3-3 for the attack is going to be finished. He also just finished his Templar Archives for more Archons. All his gateways are finished. That means it's time to push. Everything that makes your army stronger is finishing all at once. It's time to attack. And I'll show you why by watching this battle and commentating on the micro and talking about why it's such a one-sided battle. Alright, so the EMPs missed the Archons, don't really hit the sentries. All the Zealots are slamming into the bio. All the Vikings are dying to the Blink Stalkers. There's only a third Colossus. So if you lose all three, that's okay, you're not super dependent on them. All these gateways can now produce a ton of Zealots, as well as as well as Templar. So you could basically just switch into Charge Lot Archon during your attack. And this is basically like a 250 food push. It's a ton of units coming out of the gateways all at once. Where the Terran in this position, slightly behind from the mid game, trying to take another command center, behind on upgrades by 1-1. You can see that +3 weapons isn't finished, armor hasn't even been started. However, they don't have warp gates, so they can't have all these units out of their gateways instantly, unlike the warp gates. So imagine if all these units queued up and all these Raxes were finished right now, he would be able to perhaps stay in the game a bit better. But that's just not going to happen because of the slight lead that Tassadar had. This final push just sort of is like the last nail in the coffin, ending the game. If you guys have any questions about anything, please ask me on the Hotkeyit forums, and I hope you enjoyed the video and learned how to play like NSH New Star hosted Tassadar.